So, also, es ist Ihr Moment, meine Damen und Herren. Schluss jetzt mit dem Verdauungsschläfchen. Sie müssen knallharte Fragen stellen, sonst mache ich das und das ist eine Drohung. Ja, also, dann wird es inkompetent. Sie sind doch alle vom Fach. Sind doch sonst nicht so schweigsam. Na, da geht's doch gleich los. Moment, wir haben ein Mikrofon. Das ist ja hochtechnologisch. Nee, ich nicht. Der junge Mann da. Achso, sorry, klar. Kriegen wir auch eins ins Publikum? So, wir reichen das einmal durch, ganz wunderbar.
Nur noch mal zur Orientierung, wir haben 2 Mikros hier unten im Saal und oben auf dem Balkon ist auch eine Kollegin da und kann Ihnen auch das Mikro zureichen, damit Sie auch genügend Fragen stellen können. Hier meine Kollegin Verena Reif, ich hier auf der anderen Seite, also melden Sie sich einfach.
Die erste Frage nach New York. Wo sind die ganzen Autos, die früher am Rand der Fahrbahn geparkt haben?
So Martha, where have all the cars, where are all the cars now? I mean, they just disappeared, or you sent them to Mexico?
When we build the wall, it's going to be harder, but, you know. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Just a bit closer.
Oh, closer. So some of those, you know, I showed you a lot of projects. We've built 300 of these protected bike lanes in the United States over the last 10 years. Some of them, our lanes were so wide, you could just carve out that space for bikes and not really have an impact on the cars, right? Salt Lake City, they built the roads wide enough so you could turn a wagon train with 18 mules around in the street, honest. That's how they designed the city. So in some places we have really wide streets. On most of those facilities, though, we didn't. We had traffic, there were cars, and you had to make trade-offs. And so we took away travel lanes, we took away parking in order to fit those facilities in. Those are hard political choices. Every single one of those projects had pushback, had people who claimed it was going to be the end of the world, it was going to be the ruin of their business. The number one indicator of those, of whether cities make progress on this stuff is the mayor and the city council. If they have vision, if there's broad political support, these projects happen. You know, there's an interesting phenomena in the traffic world that we are seeing proven again and again, that when you reduce the capacity on some streets, some of the traffic moves to other streets and some of it just goes away. It just, people switch to other modes, they start cycling, they use transit, they walk.
So the number of cars is going down sometimes?
Sometimes on these corridors. There's, the corollary is induced demand, that if you build more highways, more people drive. The other piece is if you provide less capacity, some of that traffic, people just don't make those trips anymore. None of this is easy, and I don't mean to be flippant about it. It's big political courage that's required to do it.
Vielen Dank. Der nächste bitte. Oh, wird noch übersetzt. Ja, gleich das Mikro nach vorne, bitte.
Okay, another question to you, Martha. You have been asked where the cars are.
Yes.
My question is where is the car lobby, the motorists lobby and the oil lobby and all these lobbies? Our experience in Germany was when we had a traffic minister who seemed to be bicycle friendly. After the next vote, he was not a minister anymore, with no reason, with no official reason given out. The unofficial reason seems to be that other people had determined who becomes a minister than the voters. The suspicion, and at least the European impression here, is that this is even worse in America. Is this a wrong impression, or how was it in your case?
So the place where the car lobby is the strongest would be at our national government level, that we collect gas taxes on every gallon of gas sold. It goes to the federal level. Every 6 years, there's a bill, new legislation that decides how that money is going to come back to the states. Bicycles and pedestrian projects have been eligible for that money. There have been some set-asides or some pots of money where bicycles and pedestrian projects can get funded. So far, we have held on to that eligibility. I would say that's one of the places where every time this bill comes up, we have the big battle. So far, we have succeeded. Watch us in the next 4 years, 6 years, and see what happens. I think they are less involved officially on a very local level on these projects. The pushback is coming mostly from local businesses, residents who don't want to see their streets changed. I do think they are continuing to pour a lot of money into advertising because they're very concerned that if you look at the statistics on our young people, our millennials, they are waiting longer to get driver's licenses. They are more interested in living in walkable, bikeable communities. They are less interested in going out and buying their own car. So our trajectory is good. It remains to be seen how the car lobby really impacts our process. But they're thinking about it. On the other hand, I'll say one more thing. Ford Motor Company is the sponsor of the bike share system in San Francisco. This is the second iteration of bike share in San Francisco. They're doing a really good job of a complete network with stations, frequent stations, a very workable system, and Ford Motor Company is on bike share. So they're also diversifying and moving beyond just cars.
Vielen Dank. Ich habe eine Frage an Saskia, sofort. Hier in Deutschland, ich muss nur an die Schule meines kleinen Sohnes gucken. In den Bildern aus Utrecht habe ich das ganz normale Durchschnittsfahrrad gesehen. An der Schule meines Sohnes sehe ich Skateboards, E-Bikes, Segways, Inline-Skaters, was gibt es denn noch alles? Bald gibt es Hoverboards, diese Schwebedinger und sowas. Das heißt, müssen wir uns in Zukunft nicht auf einen viel größeren Mix an Fahrzeugen einstellen, als es heute der Fall ist? Und was machen wir dann? Kriegen die jeder eine eigene Spur?
Well, that is a very good and relevant question, actually.
I never heard that before. Thank you for that.
Yes. It's one of the big issues, because if you go to Southeast Asia, not a lot of people know that, but in the bicycle industry, a lot is changing. For example, the divide between the car industry and the bicycle industry is disappearing. One of the big car importers in the Netherlands, Pon, is actually also the owner of Gazelle bikes and also of one of Fietsnet, which is a service which picks you up if you have a broken bicycle. In Asia, they invent all kinds of crazy stuff. They can sell that for 2 years already there before it's even allowed or tested on the European market.
Right.
So what happens is that a lot of market opportunities are already being cashed in Asia and then brought to Europe with a lot of commercial power behind it. And politicians are sensitive to that. The Dutch bicycle system has already this problem. We have the e-bikes on it. We have the roller skating people on it. We have the baboo bikes, the normal cargo bikes with the children in it. They go about 12 kilometers an hour, and an average cyclist goes about 18 kilometers an hour, but a speed pedelec goes 45. So the differences in speed are on the bicycle path, and there are people dying because of that. We have several deaths related to intercycling accidents. We have now made a vision that we need to have more space for the bicycle, but we expand that to other forms of transport. So we are now really looking forward to the active modes of transport, like walking, cycling, but it could also be rollerblading or whatever you want to do. The longboards, they will be a real problem, and they don't function really well in an inner city system because they are just too slow. So they are too fast and too clumsy on the pedestrian area, and they are too slow and clumsy on the bicycle area. So I think they will disappear by itself because they are just not a fast and efficient means of transport. I mean, you arrive at the station and then you have your longboard.
Yeah.
And then what you do?
Right.
So
ja. nur aus eigener Erfahrung, hüten Sie sich vor Senioren, die gerade ein neues E-Bike haben. Ja, Mann. Aber das ist ein Sonderthema.
But that is also happening.
Ja.
Yeah. A lot of youngsters are going on e-bikes in the Netherlands.
Youngsters?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Gut, ich sage nur Rentnerdrohnen. So, hier war eine Frage irgendwo. Ja, bitte sehr.
Ist an?
Ja.
Hört ihr mich? Tim aus Berlin. I'd like to know, actually we've started a referendum a year ago in Berlin as a people's movement basically to change politics. And in Berlin we actually had exactly that situation that you described, that you had in Utrecht in the 70s, and in the US you still have it in many places also. I would like to know, we were actually quite successful because last week there was a decision that all our wishes will be fulfilled without having the referendum. So we have a new parliament, there was an election, a good election in this case, and we will really have the mobility shift in Berlin now. What I would like to know from you is, do you have examples that there were like movements out of the population, much broader movements than just the cycling foundations that really started this shift? Was it like that in Utrecht, or was it rather a top-down decision from the city council because there were EU regulations or something?
No, in Utrecht it was a really general popular movement, and it was not about cycling, it was about public space and what do you do with it. So in the inner city area there's a big traffic square, it's called Westplein, it's still there, and the people who live there, they want to have it underground. And of course that costs like 100 million euros, so the government said we're not going to do that. And we have now a local law that you can apply for a referendum, like in Berlin you did too. And the referendum was organized and held, but it was all about spatial quality. It was not about cycling or walking. I mean, it was even about a waterway, and you could row a boat, something like that. I think those are really strong popular movements. And it's really good that you have good elections, but you might want to have the referendum too, actually, because if you have a decision made by the popular vote, that is a really strong message that will keep going several elections. And if you have an election, the next election can change their views.
Gut, bis das Mikro da drüben ist, Martha, eine Frage. Die Medien, the media, let's put it like this. On what side are they? I mean, they are living on ads, they are maybe are in contact with pressure groups. Are they basically bike-friendly or more car-friendly? What's your learning from that field?
So the media are not monolithic. They're not all one voice. There have been a lot of very supportive stories about biking in the media consistently in the United States. There's a joke that, biking is the new golf. The executives go for a bike ride rather than go out golfing. So all of that has been very positive in the media. We have celebrities on bikes. It's really a different media environment. Where the media engages, again, is on a hyper-local level, on a specific project. Where in Boulder, Colorado, where I live, the city went out and built a protected bike lane, and the local newspaper had a new publisher and just decided that this was something I swear, I don't know personally, but this was what they call it clickbait. Like you write stories that are controversial. You try to find the controversy in every story, and he published stories every single day about how horrible this project was. And in the end, the city pulled the project out. The same thing happened in Portland, Oregon, where their big paper, the Oregonian, had a publisher who was very anti-bike. And the constant negative coverage of projects really was it was a real hindrance to getting things done. Chicago has one particular columnist who can be counted on to write just scathing editorials about how horrible people on bikes are, how badly they behave, how bad it is for the city. And yet, smart advocates, smart city communication people figure out how to message around that and how to flip those messages, and often making it not just about the bike, but making it about better community, about safer community, about more economically vibrant community can be really positive, and having good data to counteract the hysteria.
Der ADFC als größter Golfverein Deutschlands. Das ist so eine interessante Vorstellung.
I might add a little bit. You can use that too, because it's like you say. It's about the clickbait. The media is not necessarily opinionated against or for you, but they just want to have good read articles. So if you have something that hooks into getting a lot of traffic, in the Netherlands that's the usage of the helmet. If you write an article about that, you will be sure have a lot of traffic on your page. So use that. If you know there's controversy, the editors like to write about it, and if you positively engage them up front instead of them coming to you, you can use that to help you promote cycling, actually.
Okay. Kurze Umfrage, wer ist für eine gesetzliche Helmpflicht? I was just asking who's for a, what's das Pflicht, a duty to wear a helmet? No one is, okay. So, nicht so viel Clickbait hier. Da war eine Frage, bitte. Danach, bitte da oben. Ja, Moment, das Mikrofon vielleicht an den Mund nehmen. Nö. Vielleicht nicht so viel.
Geht nicht.
Doch.
Sorry. Aha, jetzt tut. Eine Frage an beide bezüglich Temporeduzierung, 20-Mile-Zone oder Tempo-30-Zone. Wie ist das politisch, sowohl in den USA als auch in Holland? Ist das für eine Kommune einfach oder sehr schwierig, etwas einzurichten?
Danke.
So in the United States, you look at our safety statistics for bicyclists and pedestrians, and they're not good. And in the last few years, they have been getting worse, which has been putting a big emphasis on safety of especially people walking and biking. The conversation around that, one of the conversations is around speed, right? How fast are cars going? There's a graph of the likelihood of being killed if you get hit at various speeds. And that's fueling a conversation around speed reduction. New York City has identified neighborhood streets where the speed has been lowered from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, about 30 kilometers. Seattle just passed a resolution at a citywide level that dropped the speed limit on neighborhood streets down to 20 miles an hour. So we're definitely seeing that. The message that we've been trying to send is that speed is a design issue. It's not a behavioral issue. It's how you design your streets. Because in the United States, we build these great, big, wide streets with big sweeping turns and then worry that people go too fast, and we put up a new speed limit sign and then wring our hands because nobody slows down. In the Netherlands, they get it that when you drive down a street, every single cue on a street tells you to go slow. The raised table when you enter the street, the width of the street. So our message is speed is a huge issue, but it's a design issue. And we're getting traction at a national level that we need to design our streets differently as the most effective way to control speed.
Well, taking back the speed on streets is always a struggle. And my analysis of that, it's not necessarily that people don't want to drive slower, because the speed in average cities is really slow anyway, but it's about the change. People don't like change. So if you want to change stuff, people will push back. That's it. I think we are getting now new arguments on reducing the speed. For example, in the Netherlands, it's always said it's too expensive. Because we make so many speed bumps and stuff, it's very expensive to redesign the streets safely. But you have the car industry who's promoting the driverless car. In the driverless cars, you have automated speed adaptation. So if we take the automated speed adaptation, way back to the present instead of doing it sometime in the future. We can do it today. So we implement it today, and in the European Safety Council regulations, we don't have to change as many infrastructure as we need to do otherwise. So I agree with Martha that design is key, but we can do that much, much cheaper if the car industry is getting their vehicles more safe. So that's why I always say that, in the Netherlands, I say the Fietsersbond needs to go automotive. We need to look at the automotive side because they have some solutions we might find interesting.
Und das Schönste am Autofahren ist doch die Regelübertretung. Gut, anderes Thema. Eine Frage da oben und eine Frage da ganz oben. Und dann ist Kaffeepause, dann können Sie die beiden Damen schön beim Stück Kuchen nochmal verhören. Bitte sehr. Ja, das Mikro ist
you mentioned,
jetzt.
Okay, you mentioned air quality problems in Utrecht as one of the triggers for cycling. We have the same air quality problems in Germany, but it didn't really trigger or favor cycling so far, really. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
And the second point would be the role of national government. What did they do did they give funds to reconfigure streets, to redesign streets, or to have city development? In Germany, we have a government which is fanatic to build new roads, even in regions and cities with exceedances of limit values of fine dust and nitrogenic oxide. They just keep on building roads, and they are fanatic to get more car transport, more traffic into these cities. What's the role of the national government in Netherlands?
Yeah. The difference probably between Germany and the Netherlands on the pollution side is that if you have EU regulation, you always have a national translation of that. And the environmental lobby made it happen in the Netherlands that if you didn't make the EU regulations, you got a building stop. So if you wanted to build a new car road or you wanted to do your city center like the Utrecht wanted to do, you could not do it if you could not tell and prove that you would apply with the EU regulations. So that was a really strict and hard boundary they saw coming. Actually, they got that from Germany because some German towns did use the air pollution to get toll plans or environmental zones where you could not come with your cars. The difference is probably that Utrecht changed it also in putting money and efforts into cycling. And maybe that in Germany is not happening yet. But you can, if you have air pollution problems, you can use the argument because to apply to those rules. The role of the national government, I mean, I showed you some really nice pictures, but we also have a really car-oriented government who love to build roads and who love to do really big car projects too. If you look at the money spent on cycling nationally, it's at present it's 25 million this year, which sounds like a lot, but it's 27% of the national mobility. So if you look at the whole budget, the whole mobility budget is 8 billion euros, and we spend 25 million on cycling. Of course, there is some investment in, like I told you, in the rail budget and in other budgets, but nationally we spend about 800 million on cycling, which sounds as much, but I think we spend nationally maybe 16 billion or 20 billion on mobility. So we love the cars as much as you do here. The thing is, if you do a cost analysis, cycling is very efficient and very cost-wise. So we are getting some leverage in the national government. This week I was at the new policy plan, a meeting for the new policy plan, the national policy plan on accessibility. I don't know what the word for that is, but Randy and I thought it would be access. That is that you know, everybody needs to be mobile. So the mobility plan is about cars and planes and trains and waterways, everything is in there. And one of the main themes for the next years will be cycling. I was really, really very surprised by that. So I'm looking forward to what that would mean budget-wise, because they did not put the money where their mouth is yet, but it's the same struggle everywhere, I imagine.
Prima. Letzte Frage da oben, bitte.
Nee, wie macht man?
Mikro vor den Mund. Ja, nicht so viel an den Knöpfen drücken, das wird nicht besser. Eben tat schon, leuchtet nicht. Sowas. Das hat es aber bislang bei jedem noch. Also einfach weiterreden, irgendwann springt es an.
Einfach weiterreden, irgendwann geht es an. Okay, ich versuche
ja,
jetzt. Nee.
Doch.
Okay. Ich wollte nochmal auf die Infrastruktur zurückkommen und zwar auf die Frage Zukunftsfähigkeit und Wachstumsperspektiven bei der Infrastruktur. Also ich hatte gerade bei den amerikanischen Beispielen ganz oft, am Anfang wurde gefragt, wo seid ihr mit den Autos hin? Ich habe mich gefragt, was macht ihr, wenn ihr Erfolg habt? Weil die Wege, die ich da gesehen habe, wenn ich mir vorstelle, dass man da einen normalen Berliner innerstädtischen Radverkehr auf diesen Wegen unterbringen soll, das würde nicht klappen. Da wäre einfach der Platz nicht ausreichend. Das heißt, wenn ich anfange, sowas zu bauen, habt ihr in Staaten auch schon Erfahrungen, wo sich dann herausstellt, nee, das war irgendwie zu eng, baut man dann die Bordsteine wieder ab, baut man sie dann anders? Also ich finde es zwar klasse, dass sie in ein paar Monaten fertig werden können. Ich würde bei sowas einfach befürchten, dass wir dann die nächsten 20 Jahre Infrastruktur wieder umbauen, Beton wieder umbauen, ist teuer und schwierig, dass wir dann auf den zu schmalen hängen. Wie kann man Zukunftsfähigkeit in solchen Fällen gewährleisten?
Vielen Dank, eine typisch deutsche Frage. Was ist, wenn in 20 Jahren alles schief geht?
So I talked about protected bike lanes because they're the new thing that we're doing. The other really key element to the system is using your existing network, your car network really well. So you have beautiful, narrow, old streets in your city center. In Cologne, in Mannheim, I assume in Berlin, where they make great bike routes if you can slow the speed and volume of cars. So I showed you the Portland example where they put planters in the street and it forced a right turn so you couldn't go through. I think there's huge potential for that because then there's still car access to everywhere you want to go. You're just slowing the speed. So that's a key piece of the network in every city, especially older cities like yours, are there some streets? It's not going to be every street. We're not going to be Copenhagen or the Netherlands yet. But can you create a minimum grid, they call it, of slow speed streets through your city center where they work really well for people on bikes? Barcelona is doing some really fabulous work in that area, so I would look to them as an example. About the protected bike lanes, my understanding is they're not a tool in the German toolbox yet. I think they probably should be. Whether or not you use the tool, you want to have the tool in your toolbox. In US cities, when they look at creating this low-stress network, this minimum grid, and they look at what they already have, what are the existing assets, what pieces of infrastructure already exist, and how are you going to connect them? Right, so that you can get people to places where they want to go, schools and jobs and recreation. Then you look at what's the right facility, what's the road that you can use. Is it a quiet neighborhood road that you can do a little bit of tweaks on and fix the intersection? Is it an old street, narrow street through your city center that can become a bicycle boulevard, they call them? Or is it a busier street where you need a protected bike lane? In US cities, I've not seen a single city that can build out that network without some protected bike lanes as part of their network. So, as I see in these German cities, you have some big busy streets that probably need better bike accommodation along them.
I completely agree with you. And I want to add to that, you get new means of making your point. Use intelligent big data on mobility. I mean, the Googles of this world, they can tell for any part of the street who's walking, who's cycling, who's taking the bus, and who's in a car. And when you start with a different design for a street, or maybe put in the planters and the paint, and you say, we're going to try it 6 months, you can prove that it works. And if it doesn't work, don't be too afraid to step back and say, okay, this doesn't work, let's try it then 2 streets further down the road. Because it's all about, trial and error.
Vielen Dank, Saskia Kluit und Martha Roskowski. Super.